Okay. Hi, Farah.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Nicolette. I'm the creator for the podcast. Your wordless. Read that again. Juxtaposition of your very soul. So, I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, or good night.
Good evening for
Good
me.
evening. Right. Okay. Which part of the
It's
world?
6 p.m. I'm in Dubai, so it's
Du-
6 p.m. for me.
Dubai. Okay. I've
Yeah.
never been to Dubai.
Well, and I've never
Also,
been to Malaysia, so we're gonna have to figure
we're
that
gonna
one
have to
out.
swap one of these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna read a little bit of introduction for you.
Sure.
Yeah, so today we're joined by Farah Fleischer. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, an avid baker and yogi with a career in the banking industry. She is of Parsi origin. I
Yeah.
think that's Persian, right?
Yeah, that is right. Yes, that is right.
Was born
Yeah.
in London, raised in North India, educated at a Catholic convent where I also went during my high school, in a
Right.
historic Muslim city surrounded by Hindu mythology. Wow, if I had to count that, that's like one, two, three, four, five, six different cultures.
Cultures all
Yeah,
rolled into one
yeah.
person. Yeah. So
Can you tell us? Can we maybe unpack that one by one? What are
sure.
those? Yeah.
So I think let's start with the Parsi, as you rightly said, we're Persian by origin. The religion Zoroastrianism, for your listeners that are familiar with it. Malaysia has quite a big Parsi community, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard
I've
quite a
got family that lives there, so I know there is a community there. So we're sort of come from ancient Persia before it was referred to as Iran. And
few.
when Persia was invaded, a group of the Zoroastrians fled from a port called Pars. So they're called Parsis. People came from Pars and they went to India to seek asylum. So Parsis are the group of Zoroastrians who come from India. So my mother's family is from India. My father's family, a couple of generations back, were from India, and then he was actually born in South Africa. So we've got a little bit of a mix there, though both are Parsis. And then they met in India. My father was living in London at the time. He was working there. So my mother, when they got married, moved to London, and I was born in London, and I was being brought up in a Parsi home.
Mhm.
When I was 4 years old, my mother took me to see my maternal grandmother, who lived in northern India, where my mother's from. And this little town is called Lucknow. It's quite
Lucknow.
historic. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I've
you'll,
always
yeah.
seen that in Bollywood movies.
There you go. So Lucknow is the town of Nawabs. It's very historic in terms of the mutiny against the British in 1857. The British call it the uprising, the Indians call it the mutiny. So it just depends
Mm,
on which part of history you're on. But India is mainly predominantly a Hindu sort of cultural country, right?
yeah.
And then the missionaries had set up schools. So they were the English medium schools in Lucknow, and they're the equivalent of a private education. So my mother had gone to this school. She sent me to the same school. We had Catholic nuns, Irish nuns, Indian nuns, interspersed with other sort of teachers. But it was a Christian school, a Catholic school that I went to. But when you're a child, you're just absorbing it all, right? You don't appreciate the diversity of that experience, I think, till you don't become an adult. And as you just pointed out, six cultures. But for me, it was just, this is home. This is
Like,
the
yeah,
school I go to. This is my family. And these are my friends who come from all different cultures, which you just knew the individual. You didn't focus so much on the background or the religion, but you knew there were different practices in each home
yeah,
that you just become part of. It's very, very organic. The osmosis of that, of all
yeah.
of.
I love that. So you're saying your father was born in South Africa. So, so the religion in the household.
Parsi, Zoroastrian.
Ah,
So
wow,
we're
unique.
Zoroastrian. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, I'm okay. So I would like to say that I am actually a qualified accountant. So besides doing podcasts, I have a 9 to 5. So
Same. Same.
yeah.
Snap
So
there. I'm in banking, you're accountant. Sounds like we can talk numbers.
yeah. So let's talk about your career. Like, wow, finance for 30 years. Is that
Yeah, yeah,
right? Okay.
that is true. So I
Did you love
wanted to
it?
be a doctor. I wanted to be
Oh
a
my God.
doctor.
Yeah.
Growing up in India, the choices of careers were,
Engineers, doctors. Oh, I don't know.
you've got it,
Was
architect.
lawyer big thing in the
Yes, lawyer was, but there's like a hierarchy, right?
hierarchy? Yeah,
Doctor right at the top, then maybe
yeah.
engineer. It's so funny. Yesterday, someone said to me, an Indian comedian, her son came home from school and said, Mom, they were asking my pronouns at school. And she
Okay.
said, You tell them your pronoun is DR, doctor. I know that sums up an Indian mother. So,
Yeah.
in the hierarchy of the pecking order, doctor, engineer, lawyer, architect, and then maybe if you do the arts, a teacher, accountants in there as well, with banking, accounting, finance, but very mainstream, very specific sort of career choices. So I did biology at school. I did biology, physics, chemistry because I thought I
Mm,
was going to be this
sci-
doctor.
Science student. Yes, yes, me too. And just
At
took
the,
accounting for extra subjects so that I could secure extra A's, which I
there
did.
you, yeah.
But yeah.
There you go. And then when I was 18, I was still in India, right? And I had to figure out the passport situation because India and in UK didn't have like a dual nationality agreement. So I
Ah,
didn't want to surrender my British passport. So I
of
left
course.
India to go back. UK. Yeah, that's like a no-brainer. Like there's no choice there, right? So I went back to the UK.
Was that loud?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine. Completely normal. I love that. Um, and I went back to the UK and I thought, okay, I'm going to become a doctor. But my parents had not been in the country paying taxes. So there were no student grants or loans or concessions. And my mom couldn't afford to pay the fees, the uni fees for a doctor. And it would have been a long, sort of drawn out degree slash internship. So I started working. I worked in a shoe shop. I worked in a hospital. Through the network, found a job in a bank as a trainee, literally filing, sitting with people, learning, lunch orders, that kind of stuff. And I've built my career from there. 30 years later, I'm still in banking. And yeah, here we
Wow.
are.
Wow. May I know which department?
So I'm sort of first line of defense. So it would be, we call it business management or business governance, those kind of CO function, if you
Ah,
think of it as the CO function.
so fantastic. And and okay. I read from your profile you have two kids, right? Two sons
I do.
and
Son and a daughter.
son and daughter. Okay, so did they follow in your footsteps?
No, they're
And
still studying. They're still studying.
ah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Any signs, any clues that they're gonna be joining the
I
banking?
don't think so. I don't think so. They've chosen different subjects and different, I think
Interest.
different paths. Yeah, different
Mm,
interests.
yeah. Well, I think that's okay because to be honest, I my father is also a he he's in the oil palm industry. So all my life I only see him maybe once in a week. So he comes down from the estate every weekend. And yeah, but I owe that to him. All my life. He's he's uh because I'm Filipino, but I'm Malaysian. So also a little bit cultured as well, a different culture. But yeah. So okay, Farah, if do you I know this is the age of people are going into content creating, especially the youngsters, right? So if there are people, millennials, no, I'm millennial, Gen Zs that are entering the banking market, I would want to get maybe piece of, from your advice, because I do have friends who's in banking. Some are in there for about 8 years, some are just starting. What do you think? What can you advise?
It's a very sort of interesting one. I think it depends on where you are in the world, right?
Mm,
Finance as a profession is always going to have a place, but I think the nature of banking is changing, especially for the younger generation, right? It's going more digital. They don't necessarily need the old style branch concept or talking to a person or going to meet a person. So
yeah.
I think the style, if you think about pretty much every food delivery organization has some sort of a cash or a credit system going. I read an article about how Starbucks, with their Starbucks cards, are banking X amounts of money with people who put a credit on their card, right? So Starbucks has X amount of money that their consumers are lending to Starbucks in a way. So I think the whole nature of finance is changing. I think for the younger generation, if they want to come into it, I would definitely recommend some sort of knowledge or awareness on digital and technology, because
Mm,
that is where they're going to move towards, right? Pretty much everything is data driven, right? So they need to understand data. Pretty much everything is going to move towards digital workflows, digital journeys. So I think if you come with that, so the finance plus a little bit of technology, I think that's a really great winning combination for them.
okay. So data is key.
Data is key, right?
Yeah.
Data is numbers. Numbers speak. What story do they tell? How do you analyze it? What do you do with the data? What insights do you derive? And then how do you use that to propel your business forward, right? So that's kind of what you and I would also do, but modeling data or creating tables or how do you, stage data, those kind of technical expertise would really benefit them.
Okay. To all the listeners out there,
Hmm.
this is the expert talking.
Wow, yeah. This is the expert where I'm at from my point of view, right? So
thank,
limited expertise, yeah.
thank you, Farah, for that sharing. So, okay, maybe we can start dive a little bit deeper about your story, your life. What was your childhood like?
My childhood was quite, shall we say, it wasn't stable, right? Because
Mm,
I grew up in London, or at least what I knew for my early years was London up until age 4. Now I'm taken to India. I don't speak the language. I'm 4 years old and I've gone to see my grandmother. So when you're in a holiday sort of environment for a couple of weeks, it doesn't matter. You're not exposed so much to the environment outside. You're in the family home or friends' homes. Then, through a series of circumstances, my mom decided to stay. And that wasn't perhaps presented to me. And I don't think she perhaps knew that she would end up staying, but the time period that we were there kept getting extended. And she eventually decided to stay in India because, my father um, wasn't supporting her in the way she wanted or wasn't being faithful at the time. So she made the choice to stay in India. And then I was put in school there. And for a child to be uprooted from the only home they've known without a lot of prep or a lot of support or a lot of, emotional awareness on the child's reactions, to be placed in a very, very different environment and then sort of allowed to fend for myself without the language skills, without understanding my place in that new society where I had suddenly, been dropped into. So it was a little bit rocky to begin with. And then you go to school, you learn the language, you get over it. But there was always a difference. I was that little bit different. I wasn't
mm,
Indian enough. I looked a little different. I had a British accent. My mother
mm,
was different. She was a lawyer, she was practicing. She was this very big personality. So there was always A little bit of, people saying, oh, look at her, or she's so and so's daughter, or her mother does this, or the family does that. So there was a lot of sort of surround sound that you have to figure out whether you absorb or you
Or
allow it to
you
just,
walk
yeah,
past it? Yeah.
correct. So childhood was a little bit rocky. Um, you know, I think when I look at it from an adult lens and what would I want to give my children, or would I have chosen that kind of childhood, or what might I have done different? I think, the circumstance of being in India perhaps would have stayed, but just how the child, maybe the support structure around the child, but you are talking a long time ago, right? Whereas it was
Mm,
very different parenting, a different outlook, a different method, if you like.
yeah. Were you the only child?
No, I've got siblings as well.
So when you were you the eldest?
I'm the eldest.
Okay, so when you were in India, so they followed.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So did they also experience the same kind of, I wouldn't say displacement, but more of a
I
feeling of
don't think so. Yeah,
mm,
so my brother was born there, means I don't want to speak on his behalf, but
okay,
India is home for him, more so
India
than it
is home for
was.
him.
Yeah. So
Okay,
he was born there, right? So it's a um, very different beginning and a very different outcome.
understand. Okay. So how was your relationship with your mother?
My relationship with my mother as I grew older, we were friends.
Okay.
When I was younger, it was probably a little bit more tumultuous because I think I didn't understand why I was in India. I missed my home, I
Did
missed
you
where I came
confront
from.
that? Like because you
I
see
think
all
age
the kids when
four, you
and
don't
all of a sudden,
confront.
right? Like, why do you take me here? I didn't
Yeah,
want to
no.
be here in the beginning.
Yeah, no, age four, and in India, children are meant to be seen and not heard. You do not challenge the
The
parental
mother.
authority. Yeah.
Okay.
But as a teenager,
Asian. I'm Asian too.
correct.
So
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. It's a very different ethos. You don't do what you see on television. That doesn't go down very well, and it's not tolerated. But I think as a teenager, there was a lot of angst and a lot of, just sort of with the comments, there was perhaps, the challenge, if you like, at that point, but never a confrontation because I perhaps didn't have the emotional vocabulary or even the landscape to understand what I was feeling. It was just that you feel you don't belong, or you feel, people don't get me, or I'm different, or, why am I here? So the first opportunity that I got, aged 18, I was very quick to say, I want to go back to London because in my head, London was always home. So it's a very interesting sort of journey because I don't think today, Gen Zs or the millennials, you will are far more in tune with your thoughts. You have a lot more reference points to understand what you're feeling. There's a lot more validation of your emotional landscape. We didn't have that. I don't think, we were even allowed
You,
to
you
voice it.
would you say like you didn't have like a yardstick to compare yourself to, or it's
Definitely that, because there was no one else like me around me.
mm,
So I was, the only one of me in the town. So definitely there was no yardstick, and you didn't have things like social media to, see what was going on or to see what else might be considered normal. This was the normal that I knew, and this was the normal I was living, except I felt I didn't belong in that narrative.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a interesting one, but yeah. But mom and I were good, like, and especially as I grew older, um, she was a very fun-loving person, and she was the life and soul of every party. So we became friends, and then when I had my daughter, it was lovely to see her with my daughter, and it's kind of the completion of a cycle. So
Psych.
definitely, yeah,
Full circle.
full circle for sure, for sure.
So Okay, I had so when you were saying, I had so many questions in my head. Um, I also read something about um, your relationship. It's not. I think you were closer to your. I don't know if this is right to say you're close to your mother, but not so much to your father.
Where he was absent. So
Ah, okay. So he was absent almost the entire
from the age of 4, my father
from
was
the age of
absent.
4. Okay, so it was just your mother all the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Okay, okay. And there was a section in your profile that I read. Um, you know, there was a phone call about your mother. You tell, can you tell us what was that about?
Sure. So the book that I've written, the memoir, is about my mother and me and the loss of my mother, right? So the incident surrounding the loss started with this phone call where it was the middle of the night. So it had been a normal day for me. I was living in Dubai, still am. And my ex-husband had gone out of town on business, so I'd left my phone ringer on. And the phone rang in the middle of the night, and it was my stepfather saying that my mother had been shot, and I had to get home to her as quickly as possible. And she was in Lucknow, the town where I grew up, our hometown. Um, but I couldn't leave because my kids were young and I needed my ex-husband to come home and he was out on business. So I waited till, say, 5 a.m., called him. He booked a flight. He was getting in. I booked a flight to leave. And in all this time, the decision was made to airlift her and move her from Lucknow to Delhi, which is the capital of India, where the medical facilities were better to treat her. So I left the next sort of the same day, but sort of later in the day after my ex-husband arrived, handed over the kids, and then I flew into Delhi to see my mother in hospital.
Are you comfortable to share like what actually happened? The
So I
incident?
write, yeah, I write about it in the book, which definitely I
Right.
hope your listeners will read
Yeah.
and,
Yes.
get to see the detail. But it was more a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she stood up for what she believed in, regardless of her personal safety, right? And the repercussions were um, the loss of life eventually. So she was shot, she was in hospital for 25 days, and then she eventually passed away from her internal bleeding.
So sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Okay. So uh, how can you share with us how did you overcome that stage of grief?
So I think the stage grief, it's everyone will experience it differently.
Mm.
Um, when I eventually came back from Lucknow, I stayed for a little while, and then like when I came back, I was straight back into work. And, I had a great boss who actually made sure I was kept super busy. So I almost didn't have a lot of time to dwell on it during the working day. And then when you come home from work, you've got the kids. But it was like this little veil of sadness or this, you're sort of
Oops.
embraced or you're enveloped in a little bit of grief throughout the day. Like it doesn't shift, it doesn't move. And then you've got to find ways to handle the grief
Hello.
and deal with it. And I went for counseling and I went for meditation. I did a lot of yoga, and yoga became a very powerful tool for me to help me control my mind and my thoughts and just find strength in my body, but strength in my mind. Um, One of the other things that I did was a lot of baking. So I'd always done food and cooked, but baking for me is creative. Like I go into the kitchen to create. I don't think of what I want to eat, but it's what I
Mm,
want to
mm.
create to share. So it's not that I crave a brownie. It's like I feel like making brownies for the other people to eat.
Yeah.
And
Normally the cook doesn't eat. They don't eat their own food.
yeah, it's not that I don't. I do. I have a bit of a sweet tooth, but I'll have a bite and then share
Yeah.
the rest out. But yeah, baking became a big part of what I was doing. And it was more just the creative. And they say when you work with your hands, there are nerve endings in your hands that send the senses, send you sensory signals to help soothe the mind. They say anything creative, whether you're gardening, doing embroidery or painting or baking. So as long as you're working with your hands, they say it's therapeutic. So I think those were tools that helped me. So it was sort of a physical activity, it was a creative activity, it was finding ways to make sure my mind stayed balanced, but also passage of time. So they say time heals. I don't know if it so much heals as it allows you to talk about the same story, but from a place of reflection and not so much sadness the whole time. So my memories of mom now are the happy memories. The end is still the end, the way she went, but that doesn't define all of her. My memories of her are that full life that she led and that big personality that she had, and the way we used to laugh together or joke together. Those are my memories of her now.
So, you mentioned that you've you've lived in Dubai, and your late mother, she was in Lucknow.
Hmm.
So, so at the time, did she ever come to Dubai
Yeah, she
to
did
to
quite
visit?
often. Yeah, quite
Okay,
often.
but did not live there with you.
No,
Okay, so she'd visit and then she'd come back to India.
yeah.
Okay. So I think there was a bit of a glitch just now, but I just wanted to dive deep into, like, were there times when, because when that happened, after you lost your mom, and during that period, were you already accepting of the fact that she might not make it, or were you optimistic that there would be miracles?
I think probably more of the latter. I don't think, you might say, realistically, not very many people will survive a gunshot.
Was it
But
to hit? Did it hit an internal organ?
she was pretty damaged internally,
Okay,
right? Which is how
okay,
the bleeding occurred.
okay.
Um, but she survived for 25 days and her spirit was very strong. And yes, I did think she would survive. Maybe there would have been some physical impact, but I definitely believe she would survive and, you make it through. But it wasn't to be.
I think I would really need to get a copy of your book. Where can we find that?
Uh, The website, you can go to
Okay.
farahpress.com
Ah,
and there are
okay.
links to get it from there. There's also some pictures so you can see the world I'm talking about.
Mm,
I share resources that I've read or practice that have helped me. And I write a blog on it. And any online retailer, there's a link directly on the website, but any online retailer like Amazon or Ingram or Barnes and Noble, anything that you use to buy books, you can find it.
we can find it there. Okay.
Yeah,
Amazon, definitely.
yeah. And I
Any?
look forward to hearing your feedback and reading your review.
Yes. Is
Yeah.
is there an ebook?
There's an ebook. There is
Okay.
an ebook. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's yeah, ebook, or I'm more of a old school, but for ease, I'd like to read from the iPad. But yeah,
Sure.
let's see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You so I from the story, you mentioned, I think, in your profile that you, at times, I don't know at which point in your life, you struggle to understand what is the duality of life and death. Well, in your own words, well, why, how did you struggle with that, and why did you think you struggle with that?
So I think, much as we might mentally be aware that life is finite,
Mm,
when you lose someone, I think it's a very different reality, and it brings to the forefront the fragility of life, right? And how we take it for granted that we're going to wake up tomorrow and make plans, and we've got plans to go out with our friends, or we've got travel plans. But life is, not guaranteed, and there are no guarantees about how many days we have. So, we live these sort of lives moving through it as if, death is not part of it. But
Yeah,
with
we
every
know
start,
it's
yeah,
coming, but maybe it's not my time yet. So
yeah.
I'm just gonna.
And things like what happened to my mom don't happen to people like us. Might be something you might think, right? This is
Yeah,
a story you read,
yeah,
right? You pick up any newspaper, you log onto any news channel, there's stories of crime and hurtful things happening to people like you and me, but you don't think it's ever going to be you, right? So it's this whole sort of debate about life, about death, about the way we die. And my mother believed, she was very spiritual and she believed in life and rebirth. And she said, we choose our lives for the lessons we will learn. Um, and it was hard for me to understand why somebody might choose to go the way she went, because what was the lesson in that? And mom always said she would free herself of the cycle of life and rebirth in this lifetime and pay off all her karmic debts. So if you believe in karma and you believe in, you pay off those debts each lifetime, by the way she went, she would say to me, and even when she was in hospital, she said to me, I'm going to get moksha, which is kind of the eternal bliss or the freedom from this cycle. So I think there's a lot to try and wrap your head around when you're going through the loss of someone, but you pick at it, you try and understand it, you digest it, you listen to philosophy, you hear other thoughts, you hear other speakers, and you try and bring it all together into some um, sort of philosophy that works for you. Everyone's going to be different, everyone's going to interpret it different, everyone's going to feel different and think different. But the fundamental truth is we all are born, and then at some point we are all going to leave. Um, that's just how it is. I know it sounds really depressing, and I really hope I'm not
no, it's
depressing
no,
your
it's
listeners.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Farah, this
But,
is the reason why I started the podcast, because
mm,
people, some people internalize it, and I just want to have this platform to be the space for, okay, there's somebody else actually experiencing the same thing and they are willing to share, just maybe not the whole story, just a little bit of their story. Say, okay, oh, I can resonate with her or him. That's good. I don't feel so alone or closed off. No. So that's the reason why I'm I'm picking into that story, which brings me to my next question. There is a quote. This quote is everywhere in your profile. We choose ourselves for we choose our lives for the lessons we will learn. Please, please, please enlighten me, because when I hear it, my interpretation, we choose our lives for the lessons we will learn. For example, I don't know if you heard my podcast, but by the age of 30, I have gone through, I have, okay, successful career. I would say, yeah, I think I worked my back off for that, and got the things I wanted, material things. You see, the younger me, the I got married, then I got divorced, all before 30. So, of course, the doing was me. I consciously made every decision, even though there were times when people around, people that love me, especially my family, saying, "Okay, don't do it, you're going to regret it." But it's my life. I still want to go ahead and do it. I want to try. Let me try. But all did not end up. Not everything ended up in a very, um, uh,
happy ending.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was in paradise.
Hmm.
So, mm, in that remark, what is this? We choose our lives with the lessons we will learn. I mean, I did not get into a marriage just to get divorced. I don't know, but
None of us do, right?
yeah,
I'm divorced as
yeah.
well, but think of what you learned through that process. Like if I talk about myself, some of the things I've learned is my strength, my
Mm.
ability to withstand high levels of stress, self-sufficiency, financial independence, ability to care for my children, and ability to stand on my own 2 feet. The courage of my convictions, which sounds like you have as well. I've learned to trust my inner voice. If my inner voice is telling me something's wrong, like don't you try and intellectualize it that no, you're being paranoid or no, no, no.
Yeah.
But your inner voice is, tells you, and your body tells you way before your mind even figures things out. I've learned things about cars I did not know.
Oh, really? Are you into cars too?
So, before, if you do the whole, I'll do the dinner, you take the car
Ah,
for the
yes.
service kind of thing. But now, no, I'm doing the
No,
dinner and taking the
and the
car for the
car.
service.
Yeah.
So I've learned things. It's just you figure things out, and these are lessons I might not have learned about myself. I might not have learned my own skill set or my own strength or my own ability to um, do the things that I can do on my own had I not been put in that situation. And again, I did not choose that situation, but
Mm,
when the situation came, I learned from it, right? And sometimes you don't, these learnings are part and parcel of the situation. It's not that you're saying, okay, what can I learn? Maybe in hindsight, but as you're going through it, you're dealing with the situation day on day, and each day there's something new that you have to tackle. Might have had to talk to lawyers, you might have had to deal with the finance issues, the legality of it, the separation of it, the anxiety, but how do you handle that anxiety? What do you do to
yeah,
self-soothe, And those are
yeah,
all
the
lessons you,
remnants of that emotional mm, devastation.
and divorce is the loss of a relationship as well, right?
Yes.
Your partnership
Yeah.
was an entity in its own right that
Depending
does
on the reason, I think depending on the factor of the
the
divorce, because
circumstances.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you can, I would say you can end on a good term, or you can also end on not so good term. So again,
I
this
remember,
your
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine said to me, so either when things were working out, she said, either, my ex-husband, either you're looking for the outcome, you want a particular outcome and you'll do it any which way, or you want to maintain a really good relationship and then the outcome might be a compromise. So it depends on how people choose to go through the divorce. As you say, you can either keep it, end on good terms, or you just want to get to a particular outcome and it doesn't matter if you rupture relationships in the process, right? So
Mm.
everyone has to make that choice for themselves. And sometimes you're dealt a hand and you just have to play it. You don't have a choice. You may not have picked that hand, but that's the hand you have, and you've got to play it to the best of your ability. And dropping the hand or folding the hand is not an option. Um, so I think what Mom was saying is if she believed in life and rebirth, she's saying before you come into the life, if you believe in soul families or life between lives where souls are, forming groups and saying, okay, what is it that my soul needs to learn in this life, right? So
Yeah.
life is, they say
Or
life is
it's
not
if
random.
if somebody could just give us that manual. but then but then we would miss out because we would expect, okay, oh, I'm going to, maybe there's this, I don't know, this is just in my head. They give a manual, okay, scenario A, if you go this, you will not get divorced, or you'll only get married when you're about 35. Or if you go here, it's okay, this is the path you're gonna go.
But some things are just, like the manual isn't there. And if we knew, we might play a different hand, but the outcome might still be the same. Um,
Yeah,
so I just
exactly.
feel
It's like
it,
fate, but but you still have your own free will.
yeah,
But it's like, yeah, it's like a catch 22. Life
right.
is
So when
very
you try
interesting.
wrap your
Yeah.
head around all of that, you're like,
Yes, I
as you
love it.
say,
I love I love drowning myself in this in this perspective, like
Yeah.
especially in 2020, 2021, because I got divorced in 2019. So lost, like I felt like I lost myself. 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 is the, I think, mid of last year to this year, then I started to, okay, I'm Nicolette again. Maybe it's time to get back to myself. It's like,
Well, it took you like 2.5 years, right? And that's what they say. It takes that long to deal with any major life sort
oh,
of highlight, milestone, low
yeah,
light, whatever. You need the passage of time to process, to get over it, to deal with it, to, give it its place in your history, but not let it define your future. You've got to move past it. And as you say, come back to yourself.
yeah.
The
It's
hard
like,
one, yeah.
it's like, because sometimes I'm an extremist in the sense that when I felt like, okay, something major, major life event was that, and then I, I just, I thought that life, well, what's life? What's happening? Like, I had to lose myself to find myself again. I guess
Yeah.
that's the, yeah.
And there's your lesson. You found
Yeah.
yourself, and you know that you're stronger than whatever it was that you went through. And you know that, God forbid, in the future, if there's a challenge, you have that strength within you, and you've probably found more strength through the process that you know will stand you in good stead, right?
Oh, thank you, Farah.
I'll send you my bill for the
Yeah,
counseling.
yeah. This is why I love talking to people, because
Mm.
every time they talk, it gives me like a moment to ponder in my interview, and like, okay, this is another therapy, golden nugget, wisdom that I get from my guests.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say? Okay, I know our listeners, my listeners, and your listeners too. Yeah, they some of them are still debating whether they want to buy that one here in ebook. But if you could sum up something, what do you think would be the takeaway from that book?
Well, at the heart of it, it's a story about a mother and a daughter, right? Which I think most of your listeners would be able to relate to. Maybe not daughter, but mother and child, right? It's the story of um, someone who encounters life challenges, finds a way to overcome it, and still retain the essence of who they are as a person. So it's a story of courage, it's a story of hope, it's a story of nobody out there is alone in their challenges. All of us face the challenges, right? Each of us gets a different version of a challenge, but we all get challenges. And you, through the journey, find your tools that will help you. Yoga, baking might be mine. It may be very different for other people, right? But
Photography, me
yeah,
podcasting.
anything, right? It's creative, it's mind expanding. You're meeting people from around the world. Whatever gives you joy, you find your joy and your version and embrace it. And I really hope people enjoy the read. I've been told it's an easy read. I've been told people who've picked it up, have sat through and finished it. I've
And
been
one
told people,
sitting.
yeah, in one sitting. I've been told, keep the tissue box close by.
Oh,
Uh, but I hope your listeners enjoy it, and I'd love to hear their feedback and read their reviews.
definitely. After our call, I would be going onto your website and checking which one to buy, ebook or
Amazing.
hardcover,
Amazing.
or even if they have it in Kinokuniya in KL, I probably will go there.
Okay. I look forward to that.
Okay, I'd like to take my guests. I'd like to ask them one pivotal question that relates to the essence of my podcast. So, my podcast talks a lot about self worthiness and how we view ourselves. So, have you ever had the at any point in your life, any moment that you felt maybe not worthy of yourself, uh, for your family, for your work, or your kids, or just about anything. And have, if you have, how did you navigate through that?
Interesting question. So I think self-worth, I'd probably reframe it as self-esteem, right?
Mm.
Um, because I feel that perhaps sums it up better for me, at least. So I think I would have said low self-esteem through my teens into my early youth because I didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know what I was capable of because, on the one hand, I wanted to be a doctor. Now I'm working with finance. I didn't know if that was a temporary job. Would I ever find my way back to medicine? I hadn't quite realized that the universe had pivoted me to finance because that was meant to be my path, right? I'd
Mhm.
always been good at maths, but I just didn't take it because the teacher was mean to me. So I said, okay, I'll take biology
Yes,
instead.
yes, we
Yeah.
avoid that
So,
subject.
yeah. So, you don't appreciate that all of that is trying to get you to where you're meant to go because you see it as obstacles, you see it as challenges. You think, okay, I'm not good enough to do medicine, or I'm not meant to do medicine, but that's what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
I came to London and it was hard. Age 18, I didn't have a lot of money. I had to work really, really hard. But the one thing that kept me going is my perseverance. I think I've got a strong will. I persevere. I work really hard. Um, there might be an occasion where you think, okay, I just want to hide under my duvet and not get out of bed today, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's never
Yeah, how do you
been.
push yourself out of that?
I don't know. I've never defaulted to that. Like I've never
Mm.
succumbed to that. The thought might be there, but I just get up and I keep going. And I kind of think if I move, like for me, motion, like I'm always active, especially if my mind is particularly troubled. I'm almost more more active. I'm like, okay, I need to go to the gym, then I need to come back and I need to bake a cake and I need to do something. And it's almost like distracting my mind, but also trying to process it while I'm on the move rather than sitting and dwelling on it. So if I
Mhm.
let whatever's troubling me go, it's sort of the solution presents itself in a way while I'm either exercising, while I'm not thinking about it, while I've gone for a walk, or while I'm, creating. So I think self-esteem was definitely low in my youth. And it's taken a while, and it's almost, I would say, even after the divorce, that I would say it's actually become the strongest because I know who I am. I'm not defined by my relationship to
A
my
partner.
ex-husband. Yeah. Um, Even my work, I don't define myself. It's something I do, it's something I'm good at, it's something that I enjoy doing, but that is not my essence, right? Who I am
Mm.
at
Mm.
my core is what defines me. And I know what I bring to the world. I know I know myself a little bit better, which feeds into my sense of self, which feeds into my self-esteem, if you like. That's healthy. And you know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, which helps you navigate life a little bit easier, right? Because when in the back of your head you might have said, okay, I don't really enjoy that, but I feel obliged to go. Today I might sit back and say, well, actually, I don't enjoy it. Why will I want to put myself in that situation, which
Mm.
might lead to, just not a great evening out. And you value your time, you value yourself a little bit more to prioritize how you feel, what you feel, and you can give voice to the emotion. You can give voice to the thought. You have the emotional landscape to understand what's going on inside of you if you stop and pause, and why am I reacting like that, or why am I feeling like that, or what is the underlying emotion around here and how do I deal with it. So I think, yeah, so it took a while to build that self-esteem, but my only advice would be just keep moving through it. Find something, find an activity, a pursuit, a hobby, something that takes you out of that sense of, oh my God, what am I doing? Or why is this happening?
Yeah,
To
like
just,
it's like I'm stuck. I don't think I'm
yeah,
moving anywhere, but I'm doing a lot of things. But seems like all my friends are moving ahead, but I'm not. But I'm doing a lot of things. I'm busy, or I can't sleep. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are the kind of thoughts
So
I used to have before.
my counselor was really, when I was going through my divorce, I was going for counseling as well. And she
You
said to me,
did?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I would highly
I
recommend.
yeah.
I would highly recommend.
No,
You need
therapy.
that support. You need just someone to hold space for you, right? And I
Yes.
remember at one point she said to me, so far, if you were standing and you had someone who had all these hooks in you, what would you do? Would you be struggling and trying to move forward, or would you stand still? And clearly, the answer is you would stand still because if you struggle, those hooks are going to tear pieces out of you, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you're in a sticky situation, just stand still for a sec, figure out what's going on, allow the stickiness to recede before you try and take a step forward, right? And it's not always, progress is not always forward momentum, right? So your
Ooh, I like that. Progress is not always a forward move.
forward momentum, right?
Oh, yeah. So going to click
Yeah.
this up.
So I just think, your friends have their own life story, right? And I've always believed if I have enough on my plate to fill my belly, I don't look at anyone else's plate. They could have whatever they have, but I know everyone has their own life story. So this is my journey, this is my path. Whatever's happening is you believe is for your higher good and is for you and your best interest and to bring out all your strengths to make you the best version of you. I kind of think that's all you can take because the minute you start comparing, it's a recipe for disaster. It's someone's always, and if you look at Instagram or social media, everyone's posting the happy pictures. No one's posting
No,
the not happy
no, it
pictures,
was yeah. No one's
right?
posting the rejection,
Yeah.
disappointment.
And you see the success, but everyone's success, you see that sort of snapshot of achievement, but they're not, you're not necessarily seeing, and I'm sure everyone's had to work really hard to get there, right? And it's probably taken years and years of effort to get to that one spot of having achieved whatever they've achieved. So all of that is in the background and shouldn't be discounted. So, whilst you're doing that background work, if you're not able to post the achievement picture, know it's coming because that hard work will get you there. Um, but I really think, we all have our journeys to lead. There are so many similarities that we will all have challenges, maybe different. We will all encounter happiness. We'll all encounter grief. We'll all encounter, this idea of, am I good enough? Am I doing it right? Am I moving fast enough? Am I achieving? But we all have different life paths and different things to learn in this life. So I kind of think you're in your own lane. Just do you and let everyone else do themselves.
Yes. Um,
Yeah, they're
ele-
definitely sending a bill in the post.
11, yeah. Okay, Farah, you know where to get me. My
Yeah.
email. Okay, a few more questions before we go. Yeah. So, do you meditate?
I so I'm not very good at sitting still, as I've said. I'm kind of
Exactly.
an
That
active
this is the
person.
reason why I asked because
So,
meditation is exactly the opposite of
yeah, so I do yoga. Yoga is active meditation, right? If you think of
right.
meditation, the pause in your thought process, right, to allow the mind to expand. I use my yoga or exercise or anything else that I do that's active to allow that pause in my mind and my thoughts.
Okay. So, do you have a mantra that you live by?
Do I have a mantra? So I would say the one that's on the website as you open it and in the book as well. Good thoughts, good words, and good
Good
deeds.
deeds, good
So
thoughts,
you
good words.
try. Yeah. So you start with your thoughts. If you can dream it, you can make it happen. If you can control your thoughts, you can control a lot of the emotional turmoil. What comes out of your mouth, let it be kind if you can. And always make sure your deeds are with integrity. So if you're aligned in your thoughts and your body and your mind and your actions, then you're living in your integrity and you're living um, in the essence of who you are.
Would that be if I were to ask for a quote that you would like to leave the listeners and the world as your legacy, would that be it, or do you have another one?
So my that would be a great one, I think. But my colleagues always said that on my epitaph they would say she got things done. They used a expletive, but I want to keep it clean for your listeners. But she got done.
Oh, wow. Okay,
So I
okay.
get things done. I can, make things happen, and it's part of that drive and that action kind of thing. So I'm always pushing, always finding, okay, how do we make things happen? Like there's always going to be a challenge, and I try not to dwell on the risks or the challenges. I look at the opportunity and how do I make it happen? There's always a way to make things happen.
Woo! Well, Farah. Well, Farah, I think this has been the most interesting episode so far
Thank you.
that I
Thank you.
have on.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate your time, Farah. So I think we're about time. We're good with time.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Lovely
Um.
to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for your time. And I'll be promoting your book
Thank you.
definitely via my Instagram. And yes, so listeners, be sure to check out Farah's book called My Hair and Me, a personal story from her to the world. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Farah. You have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Nicolette. You
I hope
too.
I hope we perhaps we can cross
Our
paths
paths,
in the
yeah,
future.
paths will
Yeah.
cross again. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be
I'm
lovely.
I'm following you on Instagram.
Oh,
So
amazing.
yes,
Amazing.
yes.
Thank
So
you.
if ever I come over to Dubai,
Or if I
maybe
come to Malaysia.
definitely. Okay. Thank you, Farah, for your time. Good evening. Have a good
Thank
time.
you. You too.
Okay, bye bye.